record button. So no more lame jokes for today. All right, so I heard a really good question. It came from Matthew Averett. Sorry, Matthew. He asked, when you're stuck and you don't know what to do, what is a good technique to get past that? Does that sum it up pretty well, Matthew? All right, so I'm going to pose that to the class. I have my own little techniques, but I feel like everyone's different. So I could probably learn a fair bit from you guys here too. But when you're stuck, let's maybe focus on programming right now. We'll talk about like stuck with dating later. But if you're stuck when you're like working on a program, what do you do?
I feel like breaking it down makes it a lot easier. Like breaking down, like instead of just saying, oh, I want to like put like, for example, the project is like, I want to take this picture and put it on top of this picture, but except the green. Like that's a lot harder than saying, oh, I need to make a loop to go across and then a loop to go down, you know? I feel like breaking it up into smaller pieces makes it a lot easier. And
yeah,
even if like writing it down makes it easier too.
Seriously. Yeah, there's that saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Jason, I love yours. Google a snot out of it. Yeah, that's awesome. Tanner, what's the rubber duck method?
It's just explaining it to someone else. Like you could explain it to whoever you want, but you could explain it to like a rubber duck, and it helps you kind of figure out the problem.
Yeah, that's awesome. Clean agreed. Reddit and Stack Overflow. Yeah, that kind of goes off in Jason's. Great. Anything else that you guys do?
I find working with the end in mind is kind of helpful. Like if you start from your finish and then you kind of work backwards, it tends to help me.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah, I'll tell my TAs some of the time, you know, if they're feeling exhausted, to like take a break, go eat a cookie, and then come back to work. I realize we don't always have cookies on hand, sadly, but Cody said, I usually go to a test program to try out the parts that don't work and look for a way to make it work. Oh, I love that. I told a student to do that this morning. So I was teaching 111 this morning, and there was a student, let's see, what was he working on? It was a function, or it was a program to get like a bunch of products, like just products in a store that had a price, and it had to count how many of each product was being used and then multiply the count by the product price to get the total for that product, and then get like a subtotal, like that kind of a program. And it wasn't working for him. And it had something to do with birthdays too. That's interesting. Anyways, the part of the program that wasn't working was there was a year, and he passed the year just like a string, like 08-05-2000 or something, just a string. And he passed that birthday into a function called get birth or get age or something like that. And so it was a pretty simple function, but the function basically returned an integer. It's like, yeah, you're 34 years old or something, right? Based on the birthday. But there was enough in that function. The way he chose to write it, it was, you know, he used like a different library, and so it was very concise, but it wasn't working the way that he was intending it to work. And so we're looking at this and kind of going off of what Cody said. What I ended up suggesting to him after we looked at a couple of things, you know, first we checked to make sure that the data the function was getting was right. You know, so we just did a simple print statement with the parameter of the function to say, hey, is this birth year accurate? You know, because the age that was being returned was like 1 year greater than what it was supposed to be. So we checked that first. And then I was like, all right, now what I would do is I would take your function out of this program. I would just copy it and paste it in a new Python file. And you just test it, you know, put in some random birthdays and just test it and make sure that it's returning the right integer. If it is, then great. Then you can go back to your program and test how you're using your tabularize or whatever you're using to build your print statement, because apparently that has an issue. And if it's not, then your function has an issue and you can fix that. And once you fix it in this other program, then it'll be really easy to just move it back into your original program. So Cody, I love that. Taking out the parts that don't work and fixing them. Felipe, all of that. If nothing is working still, I take a break, go on a walk, or work on something else. Sometimes I even get the answer while I'm walking. Yeah, seriously. There is something to be said for taking a little break. You guys know what happens 90% of the time when a student comes up to me with a question about a program? They'll be like, Brother Birch, I was working on this like all weekend. I couldn't get it to work. I had to like submit it unfinished on Saturday. Like, can you like look at this with me and like help me figure it out? I'm like, yeah, sure. And they like run it and it like runs perfectly. Seriously, that happens like 90% of the time that a student shows me something. Okay. And so I don't know if it's just coincidence. I think I used to think it was coincidence, but I think the act of taking a break and coming back to it, or like someone mentioned, I can't remember who said it, showing someone else, Tanner, the rubber duck method, showing someone else and kind of walking them through it. Those two things are huge. Okay. Connor, one thing that I do is talk with my brother about it. He's pretty good at this and explains it pretty good. Yeah, that helps. That helps if you have a brother who's good at it. I took cybersecurity calculus statistics class for my master's degree, and it was awful. I like know how to do addition, and that's it. But luckily, my brother is like an econ major, and he took calculus like a decade ago, and has taken calculus classes ever since. But anyways, Jason, I was working on an assignment and got stuck. I decided to go to bed, and then at like 2 a.m, I shot awake with the answer. Sometimes our minds just need to process it in the background. Yeah. So along with all of this, just a couple of practical things. Obviously, Googling things. The more you can break down a problem, like Brandon was saying, the easier it will be to Google it. The easier it will be to pull a function out and test that function independently of the rest of your program. But if you can break down your problem and be like, okay, this program is outputting a year that's wrong. Okay, so what function is that running from? What data am I passing into my function? Does my function work? Or is it the formatting after my function returns? Being able to break it down into each one of those and check each one is huge. Okay, any other thoughts on that, you guys? What to do when you get stuck?
What I like to do is I go eat some food, and that's roughly like 30 minutes. And then when I go back to the program, I go through it step by step and I identify what each line of code is doing.
That's awesome.
And what that allows me to do is go, okay, this works, this one doesn't. Just from getting that essentially getting a fresh new pair of eyes looking at the code.
Yeah, that's awesome. Jason, I was working on an assignment and got stuck. I already read that. Oh, go back to the basics. Go back to the prep material. Yeah, so that's awesome too. I was doing a little project on the side, and I was just given this like huge project in C#.NET. And I haven't even worked with .NET since like my internship, right? And I'm trying to like figure all this stuff out. And I got like an hour into it. I'm like, man, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing. Like I'd gotten like so confused like in the code that I totally like lost track of my initial problem. And I feel like that happens with students a lot because, you'll watch like a video on how to get started on an assignment. And so you'll copy everything down and then you're like 20% of the way through the assignment and you have no idea how you got there or why you're there or where you're going. Same thing with like a discussion board. You'll like see someone else working on something. You're like, oh, that's great. That's like the first chunk of my assignment. You put it in there and you start and then you don't know really where you're at or where to go. And so let's see, Ian, I think yours is awesome. Just kind of stepping through it with that fresh pair of eyes and being like, okay, what is this doing? Why is this here? It's huge. Okay, anything else, you guys?
I found that sometimes just deleting the whole chunk of code and starting over with a fresh brain is just the best way to go sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard. You have like hours invested into something. It's like, I don't want to give this up, so maybe you copy and paste that in a different folder on your computer and just try to start over and be like, all right, I'm going to give this an hour, see how it goes. Or maybe if, you have a program that's working well and a certain function's not working well, maybe you do that same principle with a function or a chunk of your code that isn't giving you what you want. Okay, great, you guys. Any other thoughts? Okay, Matthew, hopefully that was helpful. I know it was helpful for me. So, okay. Well, any other questions that came from your groups or anything else you guys wanted to talk about today? All right. Well, I'll see you guys. I'm just kidding. All right. Let me share my screen real quick. I know I probably got your hopes up. Sorry, guys. All right. Let's see. Where am I at? Lesson 9. Is that right? We're in week 5 of a block class. I've never taught a block class before, but I'm pretty sure we're in lesson 9. All right. Working with lists, creating lists, adding items to a list, iterating through one, the new operator, and we'll cover some examples. So creating lists. If I want to create an empty list, it's the same as creating a variable, except this time I have some brackets thrown in there. It's the only difference. Okay. A list is a piece of data. We have talked about integers and floating point numbers and strings. Another piece of data or another data type is a list. Okay. Can you guys think of any other data types that we've dealt with in this class? There's just one, I think.
Floats.
You're not wrong. A float is a data type. You're very right. A function is also a data type. Okay. So those are all data types. A list is an interesting data type because it can put all sorts of stuff in it. Like a function, inside of a function, I can declare different variables that are floats or ints or strings. A list can be a list of pretty much any data type. All right. So let's look at a couple of examples. The long version of creating a list, yeah, don't do that. Don't ever do that. Just use the square brackets. Okay. I don't think I've ever done that in my entire life, but it's possible, but just don't. They do the exact same thing. All right, list containing strings. If you want to start the list with items in it, you can put them inside the square brackets with commas in between like this. Check that out. Okay, we have books. This is a list of what data type?
Strings.
Strings, yeah, nice and simple. Okay, I have a bunch of strings. If I wanted a list with like our ID numbers, I could totally do that. Okay, it'd be a big old list of ints, and that would work great. List containing numbers. Okay, these are floating point numbers. Not the Python cares, I just have a list. Okay, now the way this works in memory, we're not going to go too much into this in this class, but basically, when you save a variable, it allocates a space in your system's memory for that variable, for that data. Okay, and the way you access that data is by the variable name. So if I said name equals Ian, then Ian, that string was just saved into my RAM somewhere. Okay, it'd be saved in my temporary memory on my computer, right? I didn't save it to my hard drive. Okay, it's just in RAM right now. And if I wanted to access it, I would say, you know, print name, because that was the variable name that I gave it. All right. And anytime I do that with any variable, they're just kind of like thrown into memory in no order at all. They're just there. Now, we're never going to go into that process of how our computer chooses where to put stuff. And I don't really care. I'm a programmer. I don't need to know all that stuff. But here's one thing that is important to know. These numbers and these strings are stored sequentially. So a list will have everything inside of the list stored back to back. So if I have all these like slots in memory, okay, the list, if I access the list, in this case, it's called books. If I access books, then it will grab the first place in memory of books. And then if I want to grab, say, Bible, that's the third value in this list, then I would just say books at index of 2. Okay, their indices here are always going to be 0 based, just like everything else we've dealt with in Python. So Liahona would be books at index of 0. Book of Mormon, books at index of 1, and Bible, books at index of 2. Okay, but that works because in memory, these are all stored right next to each other, all right next to each other. Okay, so a list containing numbers. Hint, we can mix types of variables and have a list with different types of variables, but this is not good practice. Any thoughts as to why we should not do that, even though we could?
Because when you input it into a function, it might break it. If it's expecting like integers and you give it a floating point number.
Yeah. So think of that example earlier with my student who had a function to calculate the age of a person based on a birthday. If all of a sudden that person sent in like a floating point number instead of a string with like 3 numbers for month, day, and year, the function would probably crash or just return nothing if there's proper enforcements for that for error handling. But yeah, if I have a list with multiple data types, then I will have very inconsistent data and it'll be really hard to work with. There's a couple ways around that, okay? Let's say that these book prices happen to be the book prices of Liahona Book, Mormon Bible, and New Testament. It's possible, I guess. Okay, if I wanted to do that, I could do what we call, I could create parallel lists. Okay, so for example, every time I have a list at an index of 1, it's going to be referring to the Book of Mormon, whether it's the book title or the book price. Okay, and then if I wanted to store a price for Bible, then I would store it in book prices at the same index that Bible is at in books. That would be a parallel list. Now, I don't really like parallel lists that much, but it is something that works, and it is something that you can do. Eventually, we will go into something called a dictionary, and we'll learn about what a dictionary is. But you know what? Let's just pull up a text editor, and I'll show you guys what a dictionary is. Kind of get ahead of ourselves a little bit. Look at that. I was doing math. All right, let's see here. temp.py. All right. So a list would look like this. So I don't need any of that. So I'm just going to say, we'll say names equals, and I open up my square brackets, and I'm just going to look at your guys' names. So I have Kalina is first on my list, and I have another string. I'm next. And we have Ian, and Brandon. Okay, have a nice list right here. And they're all the same data type. Now, if I had another list, let's say I had like a, let's call this student names. Take me out so we don't confuse anyone. And then we'll say student ages. Okay, and then I don't want to guess how old anyone is in here, so I'll just say that those are your guys' ages. Okay, but these would all line up. Okay, so if I wanted to access Ian's age or Ian's name, they would both be at index of 1 in these lists. All right, I could do the same thing. I could say like student I numbers or something like that. And I would have the different I numbers in the different spots, but they would be parallel to the other lists here. Now, the other way that you can do this with storing data so that you can access different pieces of data about the same entity. Okay, in this case, our student is the entity. All right, and each of our students has a name, an age, and an I number. If I wanted to store all of that outside of 3 parallel arrays, because I'm not the biggest fan of that, I could use what we call a dictionary. And I could say student equals, then I have curly braces. And then in here, I could do something really cool. I can basically have a bunch of variables. So I could say the name is Kalina, and the age is 20, and the I number is 14251. Okay, this is what's called a dictionary. Okay, so I have lists up here, which just have square brackets, and it's just a comma delimited list. I can have pretty much any data type in here, but the basic rule of thumb is that your list should only have 1 data type in the list. And then here I have a dictionary. Okay, now what I'm about to do may or may not blow your minds. Okay, but I can have a list of dictionaries. Okay, we just said that our list can pretty much be any data type, right? So let's say I have 3 of these students. All right, for lack of creativity, we'll just say student 1, 2, and 3. Okay, I could put this data into each one of them. That's confusing. Hang on, let me just move this down here. All right, Colleen will be first. Whoops. And then Ian, he's 21. And Brandon, he's 22. Sorry, Matthew, you're getting left off. We have I numbers here. Lots of data. Okay, so I have 3 dictionaries, right, that beautifully reflect the data in my 3 parallel lists. Now, if I wanted to put all of these into the same list, I could do that. I could say student information equals, you know what, I'll just say students equals, and then I start off a list with my square brackets, same as I did before. Nothing's changed. But now I can just say student 1, student 2, and student 3. Okay, now let's see if this works. I'm just going to say print students, and we'll see what we get. So I'm going to hit our little play button here. Oh, we got an error. Name is not defined.
Does it have to be student names?
No. So let me just try something real quick. These might have to be in quotation marks. Let's try it. And if it doesn't work, we're going to see real quick that it didn't work. So I'm going to hit our run button again. All right, and there it worked. Okay, so check this out. If I wanted to split this up, okay, notice my first character here is still a square bracket, okay, signifying that this is what data type? The entire thing.
A list.
A list. Yeah, it's a list. Anytime we have that square bracket, we're talking about a list, okay? And then inside of the list, I have dictionary 1, dictionary 2, and dictionary 3. All of them separated by commas because that's the way a list works. Okay. Now inside of my dictionary, if I had like a previous addresses right here, then this could totally be a list. I'd be like, oh yeah, she lived at 154 and 165 and 199 or something like that. And that's totally legit. Okay. Inside of a dictionary, I can pretty much store anything that I want to in here. Okay. I can put lists, I can put strings, I can put numbers, whole numbers, not whole numbers. You know, so dictionaries are super powerful because it's a really good way to organize data, a lot better than doing parallel arrays. Okay. But then they can, and very frequently do, go together when you need a list of a bunch of different data. Okay. Now, if I wanted to, so right here, I declared students like this. If I wanted to, I could declare students as, I could write it all out like this, and this would be just fine. I could say the name is Fred, and the age is 20. Whoops. Comma, and then have another one, and the name for this one is Sally, and her age, whoops. Name is Sally, and her age is 21. Okay, this is also very acceptable Python. Okay, whichever way you want to do it is totally fine. My personal preference, this, you guys saw me make like 5 typos just now. I'm glad I caught them before I saved it, but I didn't catch it. Look at that. Okay, I missed both of these. Okay, so I didn't catch them. It's really easy to make typos with something like that. So the way I prefer to do it is to set up a nice little dictionary first, and then just declare the list with the dictionaries. That's just my personal preference, but both are acceptable. Okay, they both end up doing the exact same thing. All right, questions on this, you guys?
Is there a limit, like with if-else statements? Can you have like dictionary inside dictionary inside dictionary inside dictionary? Would you just have to follow those same indentation rules?
Yep. Yep. It can get pretty messy, but yeah. Yep, and that happens. So, all right. Any other questions? Sweet. Well, that's pretty much all you're going to learn today. Okay, so now I'll just basically be reviewing everything that we just did in VS Code. If you want to bounce, you totally can, but I'll keep going here for 15 minutes. All right. Okay, adding items to a list. Okay, I actually didn't teach you guys this. This is important. If I want to add an item to a list, okay, so previously we just declared a list with a bunch of stuff in it, right? If we look back at our code here, this is a list declared with 3 things in it. So let's play around with this a little bit, and let's make a list that has one student in it. Is that acceptable? Yeah, it might not look very much like a list because there's only one thing, but it's still a list. Let's go ahead and run it and let's see what it looks like. Oh, we put a list into her dictionary, okay, which is fine. But this is just our first student, okay? I'm gonna take that out because we don't need her previous addresses in there. So I'm gonna save that and we'll run this again. There, that looks better, okay? So it is a list with a single item in it, which is totally fine. It's very common. It's very common because when we're like writing loops, a lot of the time we'll just add to a list as we go through a loop. Let's say I had like 100 students and I wanted to put them all into a list. Well, I would just loop through all of my dictionaries and just add them to the list as we go through, or something along those lines. So we have this append function. So let's say we have LDS hymns, square brackets for our list. LDS hymns.append the Spirit of God. Okay, now as you may be able to guess, this append will just add whatever parameter we pass into the append function to the next available index in our list. In this case, we have an empty list, so the next available index is 0, index of 0. Comer Joyce will be index of 1. Joseph Smith's first prayer will be 2. Redeemer of Israel will be 3. Adding numbers to a list, same thing. Adding students to a list. Okay, let's do this. So we print this up there with just a single students, and now we'll say students dot append. We'll say student 2 and student 3. Let's print this also. And let's run and see what happens. Okay. That's interesting. Oh, I didn't have a print statement between these two. That's why. Okay, so we printed it once with one student, and then we printed it once with all 3 students after Ian and Brandon had been appended. Okay. Matthew, go ahead.
So what if you wanted to add alphabetically into a list? Would you be able to put it in the middle versus append where it just adds at the end? Something like that?
Yeah. Does anyone know the answer to that question? I don't want to disappoint anyone here, Matthew. That would sure be nice, but there isn't a really easy way to do that. You could add a function to do that. Okay, we talk about writing functions to make your life easier, and I feel like that would be something that would be really nice in any Python program. But out of the box, just straight with Python, I don't know of a really easy way like using append to do that, like alphabetical append, I wish. Okay, but I don't know of anything like that. What is more commonly done instead is after we have a list that's made, we would sort the list. Okay, so let's go to Google real quick. And I'm just going to Google Python list functions. W3 Schools is great. Okay. Oh, look, hey, we just did that one. And there are a bunch. Okay, let's look at a couple of them. We have clear, copy, count, extend, index, insert, pop, remove, reverse, and sort. Let's look at sort. Uh-oh, Chrome's freezing up. Don't do this to me, computer, please. Well, at least let me scroll. All right, let's try this again. I'll wait on that page. And over here, I'll say Python list sort. Sweet, I'm closing this page. All right, so this is a very simple version. This list is of what data type?
Strings.
Strings, yeah, yeah. Okay, so if I wanted to sort this, obviously it would probably just do it in alphabetical. Come on, Google. You guys on browser's not working. This is annoying. But that sort function will just do it alphabetically. You know what, we don't need this. So let's come over here. I'm going to delete this. And right here, we're just going to make a simple list. I'm actually going to put student 2 and student 3 back. Student 2, student 3. All right, we'll put those back there. And now I'm just going to say random list equals, and we'll say Fred, George, Ronald. That's an alphabetical order. That's bad luck. Jenny is not an alphabetical order. Okay, so we have our list that is not sorted. And now I'm going to say print random list. And then we'll say sort random list dot. You can see all these functions right here that are available to any list. And I'll say sort. Okay. Now, this is not going to change my list. It looks like it, but it's not going to. Okay, but what this is going to output is the sorted list. So if right after this I say print random list will not be sorted here unless I say random list equals whatever is returned from our sort function. Okay, we've seen similar things. So right here, if I just wanted to print this, totally could, and it will print the sorted list because that's what's being returned right here, even though it won't change this random list. So let's go ahead and look at this. Well, let's watch this run. So I'm going to hit execute. Okay, here's Fred, George, Ronald, Jenny, none. Okay, let's fix that here in a sec. And obviously, oh, that was sorted. Okay, so I was wrong. Okay, the sort function does modify the list. Okay, and so that's why it said none here, because it didn't actually return anything. It just modified our list. Okay, which is why it showed up here as in alphabetical order. Okay. All right, now let's see what happens if we do it on this thing. Any guesses? What's going to happen when we try to sort dictionaries? What do you guys think? I have no idea either. Let's just try it. All right, so let's just say we can take out our Harry Potter stuff here. Print students. And we'll say print. Well, we learned students.sort, and now we'll print students again. Okay. All right, no predictions. All right, let's do it. Hit my run button. All right. Oh, look at that. Not supported between instances of dictionary. Okay, so it cannot sort a dictionary. So what would I do if I wanted to sort a dictionary? Any thoughts? Any thoughts on how we could sort this?
You sort it by individual values inside the dictionary?
Yeah, that's what I'd have to do. Ooh, Jason guessed it. It's going to explode. Okay, nice work. Oh, and Cody, the computer's rebelling. It will sort dictionary names, but not contents. Yeah, so it's not going to work to sort our dictionary. Python could probably make a guess. In other languages like C++, it would just be like, yeah, let's sort this by location and memory. That's not what anyone wants. Okay, we don't care about something's location and memory. And so Python's like, you know what, let's just not sort this. Let's let the programmer handle this, however they want to handle it. So the easiest way to sort this, let's say I wanted to sort it by name. Okay, I could just loop through each of my dictionaries and restructure my list based on these first names. Okay, or if I wanted to sort them by age. Okay, again, I could just loop through there, find whichever age is the least or the greatest, however I wanted to sort it, and sort it like that. But similar to me being able to have like a way to append to a list in alphabetical order as I append, Python just won't do it. And it won't sort my dictionary without me telling it how to sort it. Okay. All right. Okay, any questions up to this point?
What about input? Like if you prompt a user for a list?
Yeah. So anyone know how to do that? Has anyone tried that before? So let's come over here. So if I say, we'll have an input, it says, please enter a list. Okay. And let's get rid of our dictionaries here. Now that you guys know a better way than parallel lists. And I'm just going to say user string. All right. Now, once I have this string, we can convert this to a list. All right. The easiest way to do that is to go to Google and say Python, comma, delimited. Whoa, look at that. That's awesome. String to list. Okay. So we have a string, A, B, C, D, E, string dot split. Remember when we were talking about strings and how there are like a billion functions associated with the string? So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to say Python string functions. And there's all these functions in here, or methods that work. Splits the string at the specified separator and returns a list. This is very common across every programming language that I'm familiar with. Being able to split a string by a character. You can say any character. But in here, if I said, please enter a list, you know, I might leave an instruction for the user to say maybe a comma delimited list or an asterisk delimited list. We'll say comma delimited. I'm just going to say a comma list. That's embarrassing, you guys. All right. Now, we get the list from the user, and then I'll say user list equals user string dot
Brother Birch, I don't think we can hear you.
Can you guys hear me now? Wow, that's
Yes.
awesome. My computer fixed whatever it broke, except now I can't type in the chat. All right, so any questions on that? Okay, hopefully this is helpful. The functions that are built into Python are like everything. You know, me being able to split this string by any delimiter. I have multiple characters right here to take my spaces out, and I have good data that I can work with. Kalina, sorry, I misspelled your name. Okay, so Gavin, you have a question about appending. Go ahead.
So I just have been attempting to type a program, and when I try to append, it says my attribute error list object attribute append is read only.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what's.
You want to share your screen real quick? Let me stop sharing.
Sure. Can you see that? Okay, perfect. So if I run the program, got all this stuff in my way now. So do you have any friends? Yes. If I say John's a friend, then I get this error.
Oh, you forgot your
And
parentheses.
need parentheses.
Yeah. Yep. Notice on line 9,
Oh.
when you call print, you have your print. Yep. Perfect. Try that.
Okay. And now it's saying my friend names is not appropriate. I know this is more of a me issue. That's why I was waiting until the very end.
Yeah, no, you're good. I don't have anything else to teach. Interesting. Just for kicks, can you try putting that, your line 12, can you try putting it right underneath where you declare friend names?
Nope, right there.
Yeah.
Same error.
So it's because of the input. It's because of the input. Okay, so when you do an input, assign that to a variable first, because the input is going to have to go into the append function. Okay, so if I wanted to like append 5 to a list, I would have to say append parenthesis 5 closing parenthesis. And so right now, you can't say append function equals this. Append is expecting an argument. Okay, so you can put your input that you just cut and pasted. You can put that back on line 13. That's not your issue. But assign that to a variable. You might even be able to just put it into the append function. Do you get what I'm saying?
Okay. So just put input in here.
Yeah, that might work. Or if it doesn't work, then assign the input a variable. And then delete everything after. Yeah. Yeah, let's see what happens.
Perfect.
Nice. That's awesome. Sweet.
Okay, so it has to be added inside of those parentheses. Why is that different from like when we did like lowercase?
So every function is a little bit different. And append is just one that requires a parameter. Okay, and so anytime you call append, there's going to be something inside of the parameter or inside of the parentheses. Just like when you call input, you always have something in there. Same thing with append.
Okay.
So, okay. All right, you guys, any other questions? Okay, well, happy Monday. It's been fun, and I will look forward to seeing you all on Wednesday. Okay. See you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.